Hi, good morning from the U.S. Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. Welcome to Consular Conversations and happy National Deaf History Month. My name is Camila and I will be your host for today. We're going to wait a few minutes so that people have the opportunity to tune in via all our streaming platforms. But today, my guest is our Visa Chief, Stephen. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Camila, and good morning to all our many listeners out there.
So while we wait for people to tune in, Stephen, how long have you been here in Jamaica?
I've been here since late August of 2020,
Okay,
and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
great. And what would you say is your favorite thing or your favorite place to go in Jamaica?
Well, so far I've really enjoyed traveling to Montego Bay.
Okay, great. So today we are going to be talking about non-immigrant visas. Of course, please feel free to send all visa-related questions our way, but we will be trying to answer as many non-immigrant visa questions as we can today. Um, so we know from our advertisement how many questions have come in, but we also do want to make sure that we talk about our consular updates and how this section is currently functioning. So Stephen, if you could just talk a little bit more about the current operational status in the consular section.
Sure, just very briefly, as all of our listeners are well aware, we are still dealing with the pandemic conditions and the reality that that means for our operations here at the U.S. Embassy in Kingston, which is to say that given the current conditions, as is the case in many posts worldwide, we find ourselves compelled to operate at extremely reduced staffing levels here at the embassy. And what that means as far as visas are concerned is that we are not able to offer any regular tourist visa appointments at this time. And for those people who are looking for tourist visas, one way around having to come in for an interview is to apply through our interview waiver program. That is to say, for anyone whose visas has expired within the past 4 years, they may qualify for interview waiver processing, which means that they do not have to come into the embassy for an interview. They simply have to complete the online registration process, and if they qualify for interview waiver, they will receive instructions to submit their passports via courier to the embassy, where we can quickly review their cases, make a decision, and send their passports back to them. So there is no wait time there for an appointment, and this is the best way for people who are looking for tourist visas to be able to apply for tourist visas without actually having to come in for an interview.
Perfect. And can we go over, I guess, by section what we are offering? Because you did talk a little bit about what we're offering on the non-immigrant visa front. Can we talk a little bit more about our efforts
Sure.
within ACS and IB?
Absolutely. Just finishing with the non-immigrant visas. As I noted before, we're not processing regular tourist visa appointments. What limited visa appointments we can offer across other visa categories are available on a first-come, first-served basis through the appointment scheduling website. So anybody that is looking to set up an appointment in another visa class, to the degree that we actually have appointment availability, you should consult that website, and I would encourage you to do that on a regular basis to see if any additional appointments have been added. On the American Citizen Services front, they are currently processing a very limited number of passport appointments, as well as consular reports for birth abroad appointments. Again, it's a limited slate of appointments, and I would encourage people to check the website for appointment availability. They're also processing a small number of notarials on a daily basis. Again, these appointments, passports, consular reports of birth abroad, and notarials are being offered on a daily basis, so please check the website for availability. With respect to immigrant visas, we know that there is a great deal of interest out there for immigrant visas. Again, that unit is also operating at extremely reduced staffing levels, They are processing a very small number of appointments on a daily basis, and that's all they can do for the time being. So if you are awaiting an appointment, we urge you or we ask you to please continue to be patient. We're trying to process appointments as we can, but we are extremely limited in what we can do. And if you find that you're waiting for a long period of time to get an appointment, please understand you're not the only one. There are a lot of other people in your position here in Jamaica, as well as throughout the rest of the world. This is a global phenomenon, it's a global situation, and we're trying to deal with it in the best way that we can.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So now that we've gone over how the sections are currently functioning, you did mention the interview waiver program.
Yes.
And so just for our viewers, those are people who are eligible because they've been issued a full validity visa in Kingston, and they have expired within the past 4 months or are about 4 years.
4 years.
Apologies, yes, and are about to expire.
Yes.
So are there any other visa categories that can also be renewed via mail?
Yes, there are some other visa categories that can be renewed through interview waiver. However, this is on a case-by-case basis, and not necessarily all visas within a particular class will be eligible for interview waiver. So if you do have a question about a visa category other than the tourist visa category, with respect to interview waiver and whether you possibly qualify, I urge you to send us an inquiry to kingstonniv@state.gov, and someone will get back to you with respect to your individual case.
Yes, and one of those visa classes that does normally fall under the interview waiver is the C1D program,
That's correct.
So if you have been issued a C1D, which is normally a 5-year validity, you can also send that in through the interview waiver program. And I believe that there are certain people above a certain age and then children below a certain age can also renew via mail, correct?
That is possible. People over the age of 79 and children under the age of 14 might indeed qualify for interview waiver consideration.
Perfect. And for those listeners that we have who maybe they went through the appointment process before we were able to start processing IWPs within that 4-year range, what can we advise for them to do?
Right. This change to a visa expiring within the past 48 months was actually introduced just recently, a few months ago. Prior to that, the requirement or the criteria for qualifying for interview waiver was that the visa had to have expired within the past 2 years. The State Department saw fit to expand the expiration date precisely to try to accommodate people who are looking for tourist visas who are finding it difficult to obtain an appointment for an interview. So we understand that there may be people out there who initially did not fall within the 48-month expiration period, who now actually qualify for interview waiver consideration. So for people in that situation, if you have actually scheduled an appointment and now you realize that you might qualify for interview waiver, we would suggest that you contact the call center to see if you can now be scheduled as an interview waiver applicant versus an applicant who requires an actual interview date for an actual interview date. So the numbers for the call center are as follows. The area code is 876, as I'm sure your listeners know, and the numbers are 656-8535. That's 656-8535 and 630-2040. That's 630-2040. And in the event any of your listeners are actually in the United States, there is a phone number in the United States for the call center, which is area code 703-988-7005. That's 703-988-7005.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stephen. So now I think it's about time that we go into our questions. Though I was just told to note when we say full validity, that means that your visa has been issued for the full amount of time possible. So here in Jamaica, that would be 10 years
Correct.
for a tourist visa, and as I said, for a C1D visa, it would be 5 years. So once again, if you've been issued a full validity visa, then you may qualify for the interview waiver program. So I think it's time to get to our questions. So we are getting quite a lot of questions on J1. So I think it's best to break it down because we're receiving two types of questions.
Yeah.
The first type of question is, are interview waivers being considered for J1 visas?
Unfortunately, the J1 category at this time does not qualify for interview waiver consideration. So the answer to that is no. At the current time, anybody that's applying for a J1 summer work travel visa is required to have an in-person interview at the embassy.
So going off of that, then, what would be the status of the J1 visa interviews currently?
Well, again, as I noted previously, we're only able to offer extremely limited appointment availability across a variety of visa categories. Right? So we're looking at a limited number of visa appointments that we can offer, again, across various visa categories. So we are not in a position to state precisely how many appointments are available because, in all honesty, that number will fluctuate based on the conditions here and the limited staffing that we have. But the best approach for people who are seeking a J1 summer work travel visa appointment or a visa appointment in some of the other classes is simply to consult the online appointment scheduling website to see if there is appointment availability. If you don't see appointment availability on a given date, I would suggest that you check it on a regular basis to see if there are appointments, because some appointments might indeed open up.
Perfect. So Tony Ann does have a question regarding J1s. They're asking, can one reuse a J1 visa that was granted for 2020 and was not used?
Well, that will depend. Question number one is that visa still currently valid? Question number two, are you planning to use that visa to go to the same exact job that it was issued for? My suggestion to you would be, with that particular question, please send us that inquiry via Kingston NIV@state.gov so we can research the case and get back to you. But clearly, if the visa is already expired, it is not usable.
And I know many people fall into that situation, but as Stephen said, if the visa is expired, then it cannot be reused this time around. So Crystal's asking, what about C1D visas? Are they being interviewed right now?
In some circumstances, C1Ds are indeed being interviewed if there is an emergency or an urgent need for using a C1. And for people in that situation, i.e. they're required to join their vessel immediately, there is a mechanism by which they can request an expedited appointment. And that essentially entails going through the regular scheduling process, scheduling an appointment for whatever date is available, even if it's in 2022. And then after that point, you can then avail yourself of an option to request an expedited appointment. The consular manager will review that request, and if it meets the appropriate criteria, they will indeed schedule an earlier appointment so that you can meet your travel needs.
Great. Abigail is asking a question related to the interview waiver program. So they're saying, what about Indian nationals who are Jamaica residents, and their last visa was issued in Kingston? Would they qualify for the interview waiver program?
Yes, provided the last visa was a full validity visa and it's expired within 48 months. If your previous visa was indeed issued here in Kingston and you are a resident here, you can potentially qualify for interview waiver. Absolutely.
Perfect. And then Tony also has a question regarding her baby. So she's asking if they can qualify for the interview waiver process because they currently have a B1, B2 visa. Um, there is a possibility for them to send it in for children, correct?
Absolutely. There is a possibility for people with minor children to submit those cases for interview waiver consideration.
Yes, so make sure when you go through that process of scheduling your appointment, it should give you the option, and if not, please feel free to call the hotline and let them know, and they will try and fix that situation for you, okay? So we're also getting a lot of IV questions, mainly what is the status of IV appointments at this time? So for those who weren't here toward the beginning, could we just go over the IV status currently, please?
Well, absolutely. Just to give your listeners broader context for this, Jamaica is actually one of the top 10 immigrant visa issuing posts in the world. So immigrant visas are extremely popular here, and we normally process thousands upon thousands of immigrant visa cases each year. So let's look at our current situation. We've essentially been either closed or operating at extremely limited staffing since March of 2020. So over a year has gone by. Right? During that time, there have been any number of cases that have been processed at the National Visa Center that are now considered to be documentarily qualified, i.e., these are cases that are now ready for interviews, provided that there are available appointments. Well, we haven't been able to offer a great deal of appointments over the past year, as your listeners know. So what that means is there is a huge backlog of cases out there waiting to be processed. Not to mention the fact that the presidential proclamation that just recently expired, i.e. March the 31st, also precluded our processing certain types of immigrant visa cases. When that proclamation was issued, we had to cancel appointments that were scheduled for people within those visa classes because we could no longer process the cases. And during the course of the year, this office has been shut down because of the pandemic, and that forced us to cancel a variety of visa cases that were scheduled. So all of these cases now have to be rescheduled. Right? And we have to process the large number of cases that NVC is holding pending actual appointment scheduling. So also, because of the limited staffing right now, we are processing an extremely small number of immigrant visa cases on a daily basis, extremely small. So the reality of it all is this, people who are pending an interview for their immigrant visa case are going to find themselves having to wait quite a period of time before they receive an interview. That's just a reality. When I say period of time, we're talking about months, a number of months, before people can reasonably expect to get an appointment. And we just ask for everyone's patience. Again, this is an unfortunate situation. We are in the business of processing immigrant visa cases. We want to issue visas and get people moving along their new life. But this is a situation that posts around the world are confronting. We're simply limited in the number of cases that we can process, and it's an unfortunate reality.
Yes, and for all our viewers who are in this situation, we thank you for your patience and we understand your frustration. Please know that we are trying to work as tirelessly as we can, but also based on circumstances. We want to make sure we keep everyone safe.
And the other word to this is, please do not make plans, do not dramatically change your lives now with the expectation that you're getting a visa shortly and you'll be able to travel to the U.S. and start your new life. Just continue with your current lifestyle, and as soon as appointments are available and we can reach out to people and you can schedule one, then we can proceed with your case.
So going back to NIVs, we have an H-2B question. Sade is asking, can we provide an earlier date for an H-2B person that has been refused under 221G?
Again, because we're operating at extremely limited staffing, we are not able to bring applicants in for 221G interviews at this time.
Great, thank you. And just to clarify, those who have received a 221G, especially if the sheet states that they need to come in for an interview, this does mean that we cannot issue them without them coming in for an interview.
Right, and I'd like to point out, and it's a small comfort to anybody who is applying for an H-2 visa, H-2A or H-2B, and who has been informed that a 221G interview is required. It's a small comfort to them, but the reality of it all is that despite this pandemic, we have been able to process the lion's share of H-2 cases that have come through our doors. So we have made it possible for many, many H-2 applicants to get visas so they can go on to the U.S. and work in their desired areas, as they planned. So we're talking about a relatively small number of cases that have been impacted by 221G appointment requirements. We apologize to those people, but we are doing everything we can to advance H-2 processing across the board.
And going back to J's, someone's asking, did all of the J1 interviews get canceled for May? So I think it's best to speak about cancellations and how if one is canceled, they should go back and look in the system for when there are more appointments available, correct?
Right, that's a good question. So yes, anybody that has or had an appointment, a J1 visa appointment or any appointment scheduled for May initially, will find that those appointments have all been canceled. We are not actually rescheduling appointments. So our advice to people is to look on the website for appointment availability, and if you find an appointment, feel free to avail yourself of it. Again, the conditions here are incredibly uncertain. We've had periods where we've had to shut down just recently because of COVID conditions. So it's very difficult for us to project realistically what kind of appointments we're going to be able to offer in the future because, quite frankly, in this particular climate, the future is unknown.
So I think to wrap it up, we're just going to take one more question from Kimmy. They're asking if your child has a full validity B1, B2 that is not expired, but is waiting on a CR2 visa appointment. Is there an interview waiver for that? So I think we can just talk about the fact that interview waivers are only for non-immigrant visas and not for immigrant visas, correct?
That's correct. There is no provision for interview waiver for immigrant visas.
Yes. But if your child's visa at some point expires and they are under the age of, I believe it is 14, then they can send their visa in for renewal for a B1, B2, but not for the immigrant visa.
That's correct.
So Stephen, thank you so much for coming in today to answer all of our questions. Thank you to all our viewers for tuning in. Before I sign off, I do want to give a very big thank you to someone who has worked in Consular Conversations behind the scenes for the past year and has been crucial to our success. Thank you, Katie. We will miss you very much. Thank you for all of your help throughout this past year. So we look forward to seeing you all for our next Consular Conversations in May. And as always, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.